You did everything responsibly, avoided credit card debt, avoided unnecessary loans, tried to stay financially careful. No big risks, no big mistakes. From the outside, it looks like you stayed out of the debt system. But here's the part almost nobody explains. You don't actually have to borrow money to be affected by debt. Because most modern money only exists because someone, somewhere, signed a loan agreement. Which means even people who avoid debt still live inside a structure built on it. The prices you pay, the wages you earn, the stability of your job, they all depend on that system continuing to expand. Participation isn't optional, and once you see that, something uncomfortable becomes hard to ignore. The real question isn't whether you took debt, it's whether anyone living inside this system can really avoid it. Most people think staying out of debt means staying safe. You work, you earn, you try to spend carefully, you avoid unnecessary risk, you skip the things you don't really need. You tell yourself that as long as you don't borrow, you stay independent. And for a while, that feels true. Your bills are manageable, your income feels predictable, nothing feels unstable. You feel responsible, careful even, like you're doing things the right way, the way you're supposed to. You pay what you owe, you don't overextend, you don't gamble your future. From the outside, this looks like financial discipline, and internally, it feels like control. But over time, something subtle starts happening. Prices slowly adjust, rent increases, insurance increases, groceries cost a little more each year. Services you rely on quietly get more expensive. Nothing dramatic, nothing that feels like a crisis, just small increases that become normal. You adapt like everyone else does. You work a little more, you plan a little tighter, you accept a little less flexibility. Stability starts requiring more effort to maintain, more attention, more consistency, more predictability. And what once felt like freedom slowly starts to feel like upkeep, and upkeep never ends. This way of living makes sense. If you don't borrow, you reduce risk. If you stay disciplined, you avoid trouble. If you stay predictable, life stays manageable. That's what most people are taught. Debt is danger, stability is safety, responsibility is protection. And for the most part, those ideas are not wrong. Avoiding unnecessary debt does reduce personal exposure. Keeping expenses under control does create breathing room. Staying employable does reduce volatility. These are rational decisions inside the system, and they usually work in the short term, which is why the belief becomes so strong. You see examples everywhere that reinforce it. People who overspend struggle. People who overborrow get trapped. People who ignore risk lose stability. So the lesson feels obvious. Be careful, stay disciplined, avoid mistakes, and you should stay protected. If problems happen, people assume it must be because someone made a mistake, spent too much, borrowed too much, took too much risk. The explanation always stays personal. Discipline equals safety. Responsibility equals control. And if you just stay careful enough, you should be able to stay outside financial pressure. That belief feels logical, it feels fair, it feels earned, and it feels complete. And the system does reward this behavior. Stable workers get promoted, reliable people get trusted, predictable earners get approved for housing. Consistency opens doors. Lenders prefer stability. Employers reward dependability. Institutions are built to favor people who stay steady. From the system's perspective, predictable people reduce risk, and reducing risk keeps structures functioning smoothly. So stability becomes more than a personal goal. It becomes something the entire system encourages. The longer you stay stable, the more the system begins to organize around you. Your income becomes expected. Your expenses become structured. Your obligations become assumed. Payments become routine. Commitments become normal. Nothing feels forced. It feels earned. Each step looks like progress, a better apartment, a more reliable car, better insurance, more stability. But every upgrade also does something else quietly. It increases what must stay stable for everything to keep working. Stability starts requiring stability. And this is where something important starts happening that most people never notice. Stability doesn't just reduce risk, it also reduces flexibility.
Because every commitment that makes life more stable also makes change slightly harder. A lease ties you to a location. A reliable job ties you to an income pattern. A predictable schedule ties you to availability. None of these feel restrictive at first. They feel responsible, necessary even. But stability always comes with one quiet exchange. You gain certainty, you give up optionality. The system rewards the first part. It rarely mentions the second. Because once your life becomes structured around stability, movement becomes more complicated. Leaving means disruption. Changing means risk. Flexibility starts requiring sacrifice. And the more stable things become, the more expensive instability starts to feel. Not financially first, psychologically. Because now stability isn't just comfort, it's maintenance, and maintenance resists change. And this is where the debt system quietly connects back into everyday life. Because modern money does not just circulate through earnings, it expands through borrowing. Most new money enters the system when someone takes a loan. Businesses borrow to grow, governments borrow to operate, institutions borrow to expand. And when borrowing increases, the total amount of money increases with it. But something else increases too, the amount that must be repaid, with interest. Which means the system quietly depends on continuous payment flow, continuous work, continuous stability. Because if large parts of the system stopped paying, the structure would contract. So incentives quietly push toward continuation. Keep earning, keep paying, keep participating. Even people without personal debt become part of this pressure because prices adjust to the total money in circulation, opportunities adjust to system stability, risk tolerance adjusts to payment expectations, and slowly something becomes difficult to see unless you look closely. You are not just managing your own finances, you are adapting to the stability requirements of the entire structure, and the structure prefers continuity. This is where the pressure becomes personal, because as the system expands around stability, optionality starts shrinking in ways most people don't notice until later. Changing jobs becomes harder when expenses depend on steady income. Taking risks becomes harder when payments depend on predictability. Moving becomes harder when housing costs depend on timing. Even small disruptions start carrying larger consequences. A missed paycheck matters more. A gap matters more. A mistake matters more. Not because you failed, because your margin is smaller. And when margins shrink, freedom becomes conditional. You can still change direction, but now change comes with cost. Sometimes financial, sometimes emotional, sometimes both. And the longer stability is maintained, the more the system quietly organizes your life around continuation. Not because anyone planned it that way, because systems naturally reinforce what keeps them stable, which leads to a realization most people only notice after years inside it. You were not just building stability, you were slowly reducing your ability to operate without it, and dependency grows quietly. And this is the part most people only recognize when something finally changes, when they try to step outside the routine, when they try to reduce commitments, when they try to create space again. That's when the structure becomes visible, not when you enter it, when you try to move inside it. Because systems built on stability don't resist entry, they resist exit. And the longer you stay inside, the more everything quietly adjusts around your participation. Leaving stops being simple.